Today I'm going to be turning the Rhinehart pin kit. Now I've never turned this kit before. I bought it from Woodcraft and the part number is 159738. This is a gunmetal kit. It's a really striking looking pin and I'm looking forward to turning it. It uses the exact same bushings as the Navigator, so I did not have to purchase those, as well as the exact same drill bits. I'm going to be using some Masur Burch, and I think this is going to turn out to be a really nice pin. Now, if you would like to know how I prepared these wood blanks for turning on the lathe, I'll put a link below to a video that I did that discusses my procedure for preparing blanks to turn. One thing I love about this Masur Burch is it is just a pleasure to turn. It's such a tight-grained wood and it cuts just like hot butter. I've been asked to talk a little bit about the grits of sandpaper that I'm using when I sand my blanks. And what I generally use is primarily 4 grits. I'll start out with a 150 grit, clean everything up. I'll sand with the lathe running on the lowest possible speed, and then I'll come back and I'll sand with the grain. Now this wood doesn't have a lot of grain, but I'll sand from end to end just to take any circular scratches out. I'll then drop to a 240 grit, repeat the process, then to a 320, and I'll finish up with a 400 grit. At that point, the blank will be ready to be cleaned and have a CA finish applied. This blank has been sanded to 600 grit. Looks absolutely amazing. I'm going to clean it now with a little denatured alcohol. I've also swapped on my non-stick bushings. Give you kind of a sneak peek of what it's going to look like. We're going to let it sit for a few minutes. I need to make sure all of the denatured alcohol evaporates. You don't want any of that getting trapped between the blank and the CA. So we'll let it sit for a good 5-6 minutes and you can kind of see it starting to evaporate already. We'll make sure there are no dark, damp spots left on the blank. Once you apply or once you wipe the blank down with denatured alcohol, do not touch it with your finger. You don't want to get any natural oils on the blank because that can also cause the CA to not want to properly adhere to the wood blank. Let's go ahead and apply that first coat of CA. Hadn't really started to shine yet, but take a look how it really deepens the colors in the wood. This is going to be a gorgeous blank. I'm using a PSI thin wood finishing cyanoacrylate glue. I'm going to apply 4 to 5 coats of this, and then we'll switch off to a medium CA. I'll come back when we're ready to apply the medium. I just finished putting the 5th coat of thin CA on the blank. It looks really amazing. You can see it starting to dull a little bit. That'll happen as the CA dries. That is not a problem. I'm ready to start putting the medium CA on. I use a stick-fast medium finishing CA. And we're going to put 3 coats of this. We're going to give this a few minutes to dry before we apply our first coat, and I'll come back and show you what the blank looks like when I've put the final coat of medium on. I just put the final coat of medium CA on this blank. It looks fantastic. I don't dare touch it because it is still very wet. We're going to let it set and spin. I did not use activator on this blank at all. I'm hoping not to have to use activator. I'm going to give this about 10 minutes. If it's still tacky after 10 minutes, I will use a very light misting. I try to avoid the activator because I find that it dries the blank so quickly that occasionally I will see cracking below the surface. So I'm going to shut the camera off. We're going to wait a little bit and I'll come back and let you know if I think I'm going to have to use that activator or not. I've been keeping a close eye on these blanks and they are remaining tacky, and the way I'm telling is I'm touching the non-stick bushings, and the non-stick bushings are tacky. You don't ever want to touch your blank because it will leave a fingerprint and it can also leave a white mark. So by touching the non-stick bushing, I can tell that my glue is not drying. I generally, here in the Midwest, during the cold weather, the humidity gets relatively low, and I have a little bit of trouble with CA sometimes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and lightly mist this. And you can see it change from shiny to kind of matte finished. Now I'm going to turn it on low. And just make sure I got it. I hate to use the activator, but I'm not going to have a choice. When it's tacky like that, it's going to stay tacky for a long time. So what we're going to do is I'm going to shut off the camera. We're going to get these non-stick bushings off the lathe. We'll get the turning bushings back on the lathe. Then we'll come back and we'll micro mesh this blank. Ready to run through my micro mesh pads. Just going to do a quick pass, just enough to make sure I knock down any rough or high spots. The CA filled in pretty well. Take a look at what that micro mesh did to that blank. It looks like a mirror. It's absolutely gorgeous. I'm going to get the buffing wheels on the lathe. We'll go ahead and buff this and we'll be ready to install it into a kit. Got my lathe set to just a little over 1200 RPMs. I'm ready to assemble this pen, and I have all the parts laid out, and I've gone through the instructions twice because I've never done one before, and I want to be very careful. This little trim ring gets pressed into the back of the front half of the pen, and it has threads on it for the transmission. There we go. Now we're going to press the nib and bring it up and let you see the fit. I always like to show the fit to you guys. Really nice fit there. Now we'll take the nib, put it into the front of the blank. Go ahead and press that into place. Once again, I'll bring it up and show you. Got a beautiful fit there. I've already put the spring on the front of the refill because it kept rolling off my table. We'll drop that into the front of the pen. We'll grab the transmission and we'll thread the transmission to the back of the pen. Very smooth operation. After a little more research, I think I have this pen figured out. They have changed this design a tiny bit. There used to be a grommet that pressed into the back of this pen, and then this tube pressed into the grommet, which is what turns the transmission. This clip set on the grommet, and this cap attached to the top of that grommet. It no longer works that way. The way it works now is this tube is pressed into this cap, then the clip is slid over this assembly, and this is pressed into the back half of the pin. So let's go ahead and press the tube into the cap. Let's flip this around this way. Okay, now. All right, that looks good. We'll slide our clip onto there. I'm going to seat this in here. What I'm going to do is lay it down. I want to make sure that the trim ring and the cap have sort of a hexagonal pattern to them. I want to make sure that they're facing the same direction as I press them together. I just think the pin will look a lot nicer if it does. I'm going to give it just a little press in, and then we're going to stop. We're going to take a look at our clip and see if we can decide, you know, here's a nice area right here that's a very clean area with nothing to show. I think this is a great area to put the clip. That way we don't hide any of the natural beauty of the wood. I'm going to turn that up so I can keep an eye on it. There we go. And let's press this all the way in. All right, there is the top section of this pin. Let's snap her together. Line it up first. So first we'll close everything. There we go. Well, that's kind of neat. There we are. This particular pin you can open, whoops, there we go, this way or this way. Either way you turn it, you can open it. Pretty neat. I do want to tighten that transmission down. I felt it slip when I turned it the opposite direction. With the pin closed, okay, I want to make sure, see how you have this little, I'm not sure what to call it, it's kind of a quilting almost. I want to make sure I line those up. Perfect. It's a beautiful pin. I like the pin, I like the kit. I don't know that I'm a big fan of this hexagonal trim ring up here, but it is a beautiful pin. Take a look at that wood. I'd like to thank you for following along with me on the turning of this Rhinehart pin. All in all, I think the pin turned out beautiful. I got an incredible finish on this Masur Burch. I'm really happy about that. Probably not my first pick. I think I'd go for the Navigator over this pin, but it is a very interesting kit nonetheless. I hope you enjoyed the turn. I want you to know that you are always welcome in my shop. Come back and see me again real soon. Have a great evening, everybody.